What's up, man? It's Immortal Technique. Right now you're watching Chicago Street TV. Peace.
I once knew a nigga whose real name was William. His primary concern was making $1 million.
How did you get the name Immortal Technique?
Oh, I used to battle under the name Technique because I thought Immortal Technique was just too long for someone to say on stage. But my name was always Immortal Technique. Immortal, like my spirit will live forever, and Technique, like you need technique to do anything in life. You know, there's an old saying in Spanish, más vale maña que fuerza, right? Better is technique than brute strength. So I always was raised with that. My mom was like, mira, si quieres resolver un problema, if you want to resolve a problem, you know, it's not brute strength that's going to get you through it. It's going to be your intelligence. If you're ever stuck in a hole, you're not going to punch your way out the hole, you know. You're going to have to think your way out of the hole. So that's where the name comes from. I got to think my way out the hole. And I always tell people, if they're ever stuck in a hole, they just have to remember that somebody else, at some point in our hundreds of thousands of years of human history, they've been stuck in the same hole, whether it's heartache or depression, loneliness, losing people they love. Somebody else has been in that hole and they found their way out. So that means you can too.
What was it like when you were locked up in jail, prison?
I went there when I was super young. So I think for me, everything was about posturing, you know. But a lot of times it revolves around really minding your business. You know, that whole mythology, oh, when you go in there, you gotta get your respect by punching the biggest motherfucker there. Please don't do that. Please don't listen to comedians that tell you fuck shit like that, because you're gonna get yourself hung in your cell or thrown down a flight of stairs and you're gonna end up in a fucking wheelchair. Don't start a fight with the biggest person there. Don't start a fight with nobody. But if somebody starts a fight with you, you better take them to the fucking cleaners. That's what I learned. So I learned to mind my business in jail, and that shit helped me a lot. But as a person that came out back to the streets, I said I had to leave that mentality behind. So now I don't mind my fucking business. I mind my business when it comes to me not getting involved in other people's fuck shit, but if I see some shit that's wrong, I'm not gonna mind my business. Like if I was in jail and I seen people, you know, fucking somebody else up, that ain't my problem. You know what I mean? That's the mentality, and it's a bad mentality to have. I'm not gonna help somebody in need. But then again, I don't know what the circumstances of that shit is. This motherfucker might have stiffed them for 20 cartons of cigarettes. This motherfucker might have violated somebody. We don't know why he's getting jigged up. That's not my business. Nowadays, I think I have more of like a Samaritan mentality. Like I just want to help somebody. If I see something wrong, I'm be like, man, what the fuck is this? I can't keep my mouth shut.
So how long was it that you were in there for?
For a year.
Oh, it was about a year?
Yeah, I did a bullet. And I came home and my entire life was in a garbage bag. You know, when I made parole, it was 1999, and I remind people, you know, every fucking thing I own was in a trash bag. And it was very humbling, bro, to start from zip, like to start from nothing. Like imagine you in a video game, you got all the equipment, all the shields, the swords, the armor, and then niggas just wipe your game and you start with nothing. You out there naked. And it was a weird feeling for me.
So over the past years, I noticed that you changed your hair and your facial hair. Is there like a reason for that?
No, I grew back my volume 2 mustache while I was writing parts of the Middle Passage. I just thought it was interesting. I got myself back into that mentality. If you notice, I lost about 15 pounds. I was a little chubby, not about a year ago. And like a year ago, we got into like full fucking gear. We started taking care of a lot of shit. Knocking out tracks left and right, remixing stuff, you know. It was definitely like a difficult route, but no, I don't think it has any significance like, oh, okay, all of a sudden this and that. I did grow my hair out long as hell, and I don't know, maybe it was because I was at like Standing Rock with the indigenous people, and they braided my hair, and I felt a certain strength from it. So, but I think eventually, you know, now that we lost Abuelita, I'm gonna cut my hair at some point. You know what I mean? I just wanted to give my hair to somebody who needed it. So I reached out to couple of organizations. I think the one that we decided to go with was Waves for Kids. But anyway, I'm gonna eventually cut this off and give it to someone who needs it way more than I do.
Oh, that's dope. So how long did it take you to write Dance with the Devil?
Ooh, about a year. A year? Over time. Yeah. Like, no, maybe a year, like 8-9 months. But it was like literally, I wrote it little by little. I left it alone. I came back. I was doing other stuff. You know, I got out of jail in '99, and my record didn't come out. The first album I had didn't come out until I think like a week before 2 weeks before 9/11 is when Volume 1 actually dropped. So imagine, I had that much time to like, I didn't get out of jail and think, oh, I'm gonna become a rapper automatically. Like, nah, I had life shit to do. Like, I had no job. I had to go and lie to people and say I'd never been arrested. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, you know, Chicago Street TV, if I could speak to you from the hard shot town, everywhere I went when I got out the joint, these niggas slammed the door in my face. They slammed the fucking door in my face. They were like, yo, we don't want to talk to you. You got a criminal record. You know, you just got paroled. Slammed the door in my face. And honestly, if I could just be 100% with y'all, yeah, I went in there and just fucking lied my ass off. And I was like, I've never been arrested in my life. And I got a job at a internet company. And, you know, it was just a night shift. And I learned to program computers, and that's when I got, you know, really computer savvy. And I was like, okay, cool, I can do this. I can promote myself on the internet. And there was the birth of websites, around the boom of the 2000s, right? So that's what I was doing around that time. I was working at an internet company, and I would go there. I would start at 11 p.m. at night, and I would get off work at 7 a.m. So I used to see New York City from a whole different light, and it was cool. Like, you know, my lunch break was at 3:30 in the morning, so it's like I lived a whole nother life, man. But I'm grateful that I at least had a job, you know. And that's another thing about me, being an immigrant. I've had a job since I was 11 years old. You know, my father was a very serious man. You know, he came from the Peruvian military and was given a free ride to college out here. So he grew up like super disciplined, and you know, had me like, he tried to make me like that. Of course, you know, I rebelled against that, but the one thing I always remember he instilled in me is he's like, listen, you're not gonna become fat and lazy like these American kids. You're not gonna just forget what you have to do. You know, you're gonna have a job. So when I was like 11, 12, I got a job repairing TVs, VCRs, Walkman. No one uses these shits anymore. But if you got a Walkman or a VCR, I guarantee you I can repair that shit with my fucking eyes closed. It's usually the head of the VCR that has to be cleaned, but in certain cases, like I would say over 60% of the cases, it was usually the idler wheel inside the VCR that just needs to have the band replaced.
So what was your last job you had before you, like, your career really took off as a rapper?
Ooh.
Legal job.
My legal job. I worked in the office, just filing papers. Like I said, I was good with computer shit. So people would say, hey man, you know, we got a part-time job for you. Matter of fact, at the college I used to go to, that was the last job I had. I was at the college, and I think in terms of jobs, like before my career, I would say that one. But I've had jobs like in between my career, like taught in a prison. You know what I mean? So I used to run a program with a young lady who, you know, I really do appreciate from the bottom of my heart, and that's Carmen from The Gathering, sweetheart, and her and me used to run a program in a prison in the Bronx called Horizon. So that was a job that I took very seriously, and that, you know, I cherish those kids because I got to pass on the failures that I've had to them.
What are your thoughts on New York native rapper 6ix9ine?
I mean, people were saying that that dude was always a federal informant since day one. I don't know if that's true, but I think that it's very telling that you know, the people around him were guided by this kind of lust for power, and they saw him as a meal ticket, so they were willing to put aside the hood rules and the vetting that should have usually happened for somebody to be in that control. And for those of you who don't know, bro, I'm a real New Yorker, fam. So when I say I'm a real New Yorker, I'll put it to you like this. his big homie, Shotti, yeah, he used to go to my high school. He was under the wing. He was a little junior around us. Like, we just looked at, never looked at him like badly, but that was an interesting time in New York City because at that time was when the Bloods first showed up in NY, right? And as a matter of fact, they didn't have the strength that they used to in NY. So a couple of the dudes, they came to my school, I don't know, looking to recruit somebody, and me and my man smacked the shit out of one of them, and we grabbed another dude like, yo, who the fuck are you? And he was like, I'm a Blood, and we're like, no, you're not. That's some West Coast shit. But here's my thing. When the Bloods established themselves, and I understood why they did, because it was kind of like a pushback against the racist gangs that kind of dominated, or the racism that came out of some of the gangs that dominated in New York, and then were transferred from Chicago. And that's why I never hated on when they finally came out and did their fucking, I'm coming out here, I'm New York, I'm a Blood. And I said, people say, oh, that's not real. And I said, well, wait a minute, hold on. If you're telling me that somebody's not a real Blood because they're from New York and it started out in LA, then how can a person be a real king if they're in New York if that shit started in Chicago, right? It started here. So it's like, come on, let's do the science. This is just about people going in different places. But the biggest issue, I think, for me was that these were a lot of people that had the potential to do much more things in their neighborhood than they did. You know what I mean? Those street organizations originally come from the broken and splintered part of revolutionary organizations. That's why at the very core, all of their laws are about, building, protecting the neighborhood, being somebody that does positive things. But, I'm gonna be honest with you, the drug game really ruined that for me. The drug game destroyed the Latin kid. The drug game destroyed the Bloods. And it became a bunch of fiends and maniacs that were giving orders that people didn't understand. And it had the potential to be something much different. And that's very unfortunate that it ended up the way it is, in a very corrupt way. But I mean, I used to know a lot of people who were 5%ers, who were Bloods, who were Kings in the late 80s and the early 90s, who had a vision to do something differently. It's just a shame that that never happened, because I think that if they changed it, a lot of the dudes' visions that I met, these were people who had some kind of power in 5%ers and in the Bloods and the Kings, in other folk nation that was out there. And when they basically got their organization co-opted by the drug game, that ruined their chances of making any positive change in the community. Now, was that done on purpose? You decide. You tell me. Right. You tell me, Chicago.
When was the last time that you can recall you saw 6ix9ine boy Shotti?
In high school.
How many years ago would you say that?
He was a kid. He was like 3-4 years under me.
Oh, okay.
Mind you, this is when I was still throwing people in trash cans.
Right.
This is when all these people, Lin-Manuel and all the rest of them, like, I was not a nice person. But the crazy part is, I'll tell you right now, if you got thrown in the trash can, that was about the least of the bad things that happened to you. I mean, like, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not proud of the shit I used to do. I mean, I had real beef with real people. Me being a bully in school, being an asshole to people, was just a reaction to being around a bunch of kids that I perceived as being privileged and not having to worry about the same things as me. Like, imagine if you were a kid in Chicago and you go to a good school, but you live in a really fucked up neighborhood. So you got to come home to people that I don't know how it is for the other communities, but I'll say this, in the black and brown community, unfortunately, if you're smart, people take that as you being soft. Like, if you carrying books or you wearing glasses, niggas want to fight you automatically. Like, you know what I mean? Oh, who's this nigga? You got the answer to everything, prep school? And I'm like, first of all, I don't go to a prep school. I go to a school that you got to take a test to get into. And because your mother got nutted in by 85 niggas and you don't know who your father is, that's not my fault. Oh, let's fight. Right. That was my answer to everything. Oh, you think you have the answer to something, little nigga? Well, I don't know what asshole your mother fell out of, but like that would be my answer. Like, if you want to antagonize me, I'm gonna antagonize you. That's how I used to be. So anybody that knows me from that era, he probably knew me as being the big bully in school, and I probably did roof his ball or some shit as a little kid. But I don't have no negativity. I mean, obviously, I just a warning for people that are out there, bro. Be careful who you let in your circle. Now, was he a Fed the whole time? We don't know, right? Court documents will reveal that someday. What's that shit in the Bible that they say? Truth crushed will eventually come to light. We'll see.
Did you ever finish school?
Yeah, I finished high school.
Oh,
But I never finished college. I went to prison.
what were you going to college for?
Communications. I wanted to make movies. Like I was trying to major in film and video. I had worked on like this TV station called Manhattan Neighborhood Network. It's like public access TV. So we made our own little news reports about what was going on in the street, whether there was gentrification happening in neighborhoods. Like we were at this time, like 42nd Street in New York was changing. It used to be full of poor houses and strip clubs, and now it's like Disneyland. So we actually recorded a bunch of stuff with Manhattan Neighborhood Network about that. So that's what I wanted to do. I originally wanted to be, first I was going to go to Marine Corps OCS. That was one of my dreams. Then I thought, man, if that doesn't work, let me have film school on the side. So, I used to work out with the Marines during the day, and I had film school for the rest of the time. That was me. That was my life. It was one or the other, so,
It's interesting that you bring up about film. What I always noticed, you never had like a official music video.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, I'm not ready to reveal it yet, but no, I've never had a music video of my own. And that's something that artists always trip out about. They say, man, you became this famous and you became this well known that you're out here, giving niggas snippets of a new album and playing records that are like 10 years old. And this place is still gonna have hundreds of people in it tonight. So I appreciate you.
Is it difficult to be a Latin rapper?
Well, I'm not Latin. Latin people are from Spain and Portugal and France. They speak a Latin-based language, yes. But I'm indigenous with some African traits, some African ancestry, and I was born in Peru. So, when people talk about Latinx, I see a lot of, and this is no disrespect, but I just see a lot more so-called white Latinos use that term. When I run into people that are from an indigenous side, that's what they choose to acknowledge, because if we do the math, America and this country that we live in now is a settler colony that's built on indigenous land. This whole continent, this whole hemisphere is indigenous. From the Inuit people in Canada, which is another settler colony, all the way to the Mapuche, all the way down in Chile, the Tahuantinsuyo in Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, the thousands of indigenous people that made up, or indigenous tribes that made up the quote-unquote Inca Empire. That really, there were people way before that. The Moche, the Nazca, civilizations like Caral. So I got very into studying these particular things like about 10 years ago. And I feel, very fortunate to be able to expand my knowledge on that area. So I think, if anything, sure, I've always had a stigmatism because people were like, hey, are you the DJ? Are you the graffiti writer? And I'm like, nah, I'm the MC. And they'd be like, oh, okay. And then later they'd be like, oh, coming on stage, DJ Technique. And I'd be like, I'm not a DJ, my dude. And I would rap. And I think that was the part that really fucked people up. They knew when I finally rapped, they were like, yo, this kid is dirty. Like, yeah, he's nice.
Do you feel like rappers like Big Pun or like Kid Frost or Cypher Hill kind of opened the doors for Latin rappers, or do you feel like it was kind of always there?
No, absolutely. I feel like Cypher Hill, Pun, I got a lot of respect for them. I got a lot of respect for the people that came before me. I mean, I've done lots of openers for Cypher Hill. Be Real is a real ass dude, man. I give him a lot of props. He's always looked out for anybody that is on the come up. So I can say that about Be Real. He definitely specifically asked for me, on some of the shows, and he was like, yo, I want that kid to open up. He's nice. I like that dude. So respect to Be Real and Cypher Hill. And in terms of like Big Pun, I've met him in passing at a show before I even rapped. But to be honest, he passed away before, you know what I mean, I ever really got to ever put anything on wax, you know what I mean, before I was ever making music. He actually passed away while I was incarcerated, so him and Big L. Rest in peace.
You spoke about writing a book. I do want to know, what is your book about, and have you completed your book, or what's the progress on that?
I'm writing a book, but I don't want to give any more details. It's a surprise. But you're going to find a lot of very interesting stories there.
So your music, you're very, very lyrical. One of the greatest, and not the greatest in my opinion. And you really crack down a lot on government conspiracies, religion, and just political views. Has the government ever tried to come at you or look for you or say anything to you?
Sure, yeah. They've come at me. I've had phone calls. I've had people come to my door. Feds, ICE, Homeland Security. I've been interviewed when I've come home from all the places that I've gone. You know, I went to Venezuela to do a big show. These like stopped me right in the airport, and I always tell people a funny story. You know, when you go and you're coming back to the States, if you've ever left the country, for those people that have been fortunate enough to travel, because I know a lot of people haven't had that opportunity, but you present them your passport and you go through this very narrow, like little hallway almost, like a short hallway. I went there and I gave them my passport, and the dude looked at the computer, he looked at me, looked at the computer, looked at me, and he said, "I'm gonna need you to stay still right now." And I said, "Okay, I got no problem." He put my passport in a red bag, and the two things closed on me. Like there's little, you don't know them, but there's these little like glass doors that are in the side of stuff, and they'll pop out, or there's a hole in the ground that opens and this thing pops out. So it just makes it harder for you to escape. I had no reason to run, so I was totally calm. And they brought me in there. And you know, one of the stories I tell, and I'm not gonna tell it now, but it's in the book, is what happened when they fucking took me into this office.
You're very into conspiracies. Out of curiosity, what are your thoughts on extraterrestrials?
So I took a friend of mine, we were on tour, and we happened to be passing by France. And I was passing by a cathedral, and I remembered a joke that I read in the book, and I told my friend, I said, "You know what? There was a bunch of tourists outside, American tourists, and I said to them, do you know what? I think aliens built this." And the lady looked at me and she goes, "Excuse me?" I said, "Yeah, I don't think Europeans were advanced enough to build something like this. So I think aliens did that." And she looked at me and she goes, "What? I don't think that's true." I said, "Oh, that's funny. But when it comes to the things that brown people built, you don't think that we're smart enough or strong enough or know anything about math or engineering. Even though we gave you the number 0, you wouldn't even be able to have a fucking computer. You would have nothing in terms of advanced technology without the mathematics that you stole from indigenous people." So at that point, the lady started laughing. She was like, "I understand what you mean." So I think there's some things we can attribute, and I think that's an interesting theory. I'm not going to get too deep into it because obviously I will say that I do believe that there is extraterrestrial life. I think the universe is vast enough that there has to be. As to whether those people are the creators of us or whether they're, you know, just observers, maybe we're on a petri dish in space, we don't know. This planet may be a prison. Human beings may have run amok around the universe once upon a time, or some version of us. And we caused so much damage that motherfuckers like, nah, lock them on that planet and make sure they never get the fuck off. So you never know what it may be. There's a lot of theories about that. But I do think that it's very interesting that a lot of ancient civilizations, whether they're European, Asian, African, or indigenous, had a lot of symbolism when it comes to dealing with things that are not of this world. I'll just say that.
Is there any upcoming projects that you have or currently working on?
Yeah, I'm just finishing up the Middle Passage. You're gonna hear a couple of songs from there tonight. So it's a very powerful message. It's a brutal album. We talk about a lot of things, that are going on in today's society. So I really hope that people embrace themselves for it. I got some stuff in Spanish too. I'm back to flipping it in Inglés y Español. Even though that's not my native language. One thing I would like to do one day, and I've been practicing a little bit, but obviously I'm not as good as other people. I would like to do like a verse or do something in my indigenous language of Brunasimi, which is called Quechua. But we'll see, hopefully one day.
I got 2 questions for the middle passage. Number 1 is why that title, and number 2, I remember you talked about that album years ago, and I just out of curiosity, what was the long wait for it?
Oh, I toured the world 10 times over. I've been to every continent except Antarctica. And I definitely had a lot of personal loss in my life in the past couple of years that kind of sidestepped me. Some stuff, health problems, shit that I was working on, stuff that I'll embellish more later. But yeah, it was always the plan. It just kept getting sidetracked by one thing or another. And I think if I can be totally honest with you and answer your question in complete, I guess it's a good way to wrap up the interview. You know, when Abuelita died, I said, I gotta finish this fucking shit. And that shit really hurt me. Because even though she was old, I always thought, man, we were gonna have her forever. And she was really one of the people that really believed in me. And she would always, you know, she was a tough lady. So she would always make me tough. She'd be like, what, you fucking scared to take a freezing cold shower? Like, when I would go stay with her, she didn't have like electricity like other people. There was only electricity for certain times, right? Like I remember one time we were there and all the lights went off and I was like, what happened, Grandma? And she's like, oh, nothing. The guerrillas probably blew up the power station. Like, go get a fucking candle. It's like, damn, she's a soldier. She's a soldier. Like, she'd be like, well, the toilet don't flush. She goes, of course it doesn't, stupid. She said, grab a fucking bucket, pour the water in the toilet, and that's how you flush the toilet. Wake up. You know, she'd be like, you know, you're gonna work in the field, do it. You gotta wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. You wanna own land, you gotta take care of it. I miss her, man. And when she passed early this year, I said, fuck this shit. Fuck everything else going on. You know what I mean? I'm gonna finish this shit. I'm dedicated to her. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Immortal Tech, or you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Tech Immortal. Peace.
His new brothers cocked the gat to a head and pulled back the shirt cover. But what he saw made him start to cringe and stutter, cause he was staring into the eyes of his own mother. She looked back at him and cried cause he had forsaken her.